Welcome to the notes on solving quadratic equations by factoring. So now that once you know how to factor, you're going to use that to solve equations. That's the whole idea. Now, what is a quadratic equation? It's in this form right here where we have ax squared plus bx plus c, and we want it equal to 0. It's not always set equal to 0. We want to get it set equal to 0, and you'll see what that means by that in a second here. Here are some examples. We've seen these before. Here's one here. Again, there's your x squared, your x. All right, this one just has the x squared. All right, all of these are examples of quadratic equation. Anytime you got that x squared in the equation, it is a quadratic. Now, this next idea is really important. The zero factor theorem. Okay, if you have two numbers, a and b, if they multiply to equal 0, all right, the only way two numbers multiply to equal 0 is if one of them is 0. Either a has to equal 0 or b has to equal 0. There's no way to multiply two numbers to get 0 unless one of them is 0. So the only way to get 3, if I'm going to multiply 3 by some number, the only number I can multiply by is 0 to get 0. One of them has to be 0. So when we're factoring, this is kind of the same idea here. If the product is 0, then a factor is 0. So again, if I say x right here, I'm going to look at this example right here. X times x plus 5 equals 0. Then either x has to equal 0 or x plus 5 has to equal 0. Again, when we're solving these by factoring, we're multiplying them. It's a product of factors. One of them is going to have to equal 0. You're going to see why that's really important in a second. And again, this is only true when the product is 0, and it multiplies to equal 0. So here are some steps. You can refer to these when you look back at this. Number one is write the equation in standard form so that one side of the equation is 0. One side of the equation, it has to equal 0. Equal 0, has to. All right, the next step is just factor. That's what we've been doing. Factor those quadratic expressions. All right, we've just been doing that. And then this third step is key. Set each containing factor or a variable equal to 0 because we're going to have the equation equal to 0. So one of those factors has to be 0. You'll see what I mean by that. And then solve the resulting equations. Pretty straightforward. Okay, so let's look at number one. Let's go through those steps. Okay, number one. All right, it's set equal to 0. Number two, factor. Well, this one's already factored for us. We don't have to do step 2. It's already factored. Step three, set each factor containing a variable equal to 0. So I'm going to solve this now. So since this times this equals 0, one of these has to be 0. So either x minus 3 equals 0 or x plus 1 equals 0. See how I took each factor and set it equal to 0. That's how I'm going to solve because we know one of them has to be 0. That's how we solve these. And then I just simply solve. If I want to solve this side, I just add 3 to each side. So x can equal 3. Oops, I want to be in blue there. So x can equal 3. Or, all right, this side, I got to subtract 1 to get x by itself. Or x is going to equal -1. So here's my answer right here. 2 answers to this solution. If x was 3, if I put in a 3, well, 3 minus 3 is 0. So 0 times anything is 0. Or if I put in a -1 here, -1 plus 1 is 0. Again, 0 times anything is 0. Next one. Again, set equal to 0. It's already factored. All right, so we set any variable, anything that contains a variable, equal to 0. So I got to take the x and set that equal to 0. Oh, that's nice. It's already solved. Or I take the 5x minus 2 and set that equal to 0. And then I'm just going to solve for x. So in this case, I'm going to add 2. So 5x equals 2. Now I'm going to divide each side by 5. All right, so x equals, oh, that's okay. Keep it as a fraction, 2 over 5. Or, like as we said, x is going to equal 0. So there's our 2 answers. All right, let's take a look at a couple more examples that you're going to see. Okay, this one right here. All right. It's set equal to 0. Great. It's not factored. Okay, it's a trinomial. This is where we need to look to factors of -22 that add up to -9. This is what we did. This is what we've been taught, how to factor trinomials. So we know it's going to look something like this. I'm going to say, hey, what multiplies to -22 adds a -9? Well, I'm going to say, I know it's got to be 11 and 2, so -11 plus 2 equals 0. Now it's factored. Now I need to solve. Set each of these equal to 0. So I'm going to say, hey, x minus 11 is going to equal, x minus 11 equals 0, or x plus 2 has to equal 0. And then again, solve. Add 11, minus 2, minus 2. So our final answer is going to be x equals 11 or negative 2. And there you go. So all we're doing, the only added step is setting each factor equal to 0. All right, only new material. Another one. Okay, what do you notice about this one? Okay, this is a kind of a tough one. Before we just set each of these equal to 0, but now it's equal to 4. So the first thing we need to do is we need to get this thing equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 4 to each side. All right. So now, well, and really actually on this one, I think I'm actually going to distribute, since it's not set equal to 0. Oops. The first thing I want to do is I'm going to distribute first. All right. So this is going to equal 2x squared minus 7x. All right, so I'm going to write a little neater here for you. 2x squared minus 7x equals 4. Well, now I want this thing set equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract 4 to each side. So when I do that, I'm going to be left with, I'll do it right under here, 2x squared minus 7x minus 4. All right, that can't combine that. They're not like terms. Now it's equal to 0. Okay, well, now I need to factor this. Okay, leading coefficient is a 2. I know I need to do tic-tac-toe now to factor this thing. So that's not going away. Remember how to do this, guys. So we take our first term. We take our 2x squared. We times it by our minus 4. We get negative 8x squared. Well, now we need to think of a number that multiplies to negative 8x that adds up to negative 7x. So I'm going to say that that's going to be negative 8x. Times positive 1x. Negative 8 plus 1 is negative 7. Then I just fill in the rest of the chart. 2x times x equals 2x squared. 2x times negative 4. 1x times positive 1 equals 1x. And then here's my factors right here. So when I rewrite my answer, when I factor this now, I'm going to have 2x plus 1. And then I'm going to have 2x or x minus 4 equals 0. I'm not done. I set each of these equal to 0 and solve. So I'm going to do that over here. So I'm going to say 2x plus 1 equals 0 or x minus 4 equals 0. Well, this one's obviously going to be, we've got the pattern, add 4. So x is going to equal 4. This one we're going to add subtract 1. So 2x is going to equal negative 1. Divide by 2. X equals negative 1/2 or x equals 4. So there you go. Last one I'll show you guys. Remember, first step, it's set equal to 0. Awesome. All right. Now we're going to factor. Remember the first step of factoring. Always look for a GCF. So in this case, I look at negative 2, 4, and 30. They're all even numbers. I know I can take out a negative 2. So now I rewrite this. All right. I've taken out the negative 2. What am I left with? Well, that'll be x squared. This, again, sign switch, that becomes a positive 2x. That becomes a minus 15. And then that equals 0. Now I need to factor this trinomial right here. All right, so I'm going to have this negative 2 on the outside. This trinomial right here. I'm going to break down to x and x. Okay, what multiplies to negative 15 adds up to 2. So I know it's got to be 1 positive, 1 negative. So I'm thinking minus 3. Plus 5. Positive 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 5 minus 3 is 2. And that's going to equal 0. Now, I only have to set the factors that have a variable equal to 0. So that would be this one and this one. This negative 2, what I'm really doing is dividing it out from each side, but 0 divided by any number is 0. So I don't have to worry about that negative 2 now. So then I just set the x minus 3 equal to 0 or x plus 5 equal to 0. One of those has to be 0 because if one of them is 0, the whole thing's 0. So we know the answer is going to be x equals add 3 or subtract 5. So it's going to be negative 5. And then there's your final answer. So that is how you're going to solve by factoring. Follow those steps.